Film Masters brings to Blu-ray a quartet of quintessential 1950s schlocky sci-fi monster movies. And I say that legitimately with all the love I have for this genre. This is the Monster Mayhem collection. This is a 2-disc set, 2 films per disc of newly remastered films that you might have bought before if you're a fan of this stuff like I am. You might have had this in public domain collections, whatever. It's never looked as good as this. This is region ABC. This is all region. This will play anywhere in the world if you throw it into a Blu-ray player. It is all in black and white. They are all widescreen, not like CinemaScope widescreen, but slightly more widescreen than your 178 TV monitor is. They all look great. I'm going to get the technical stuff out of the way. Unless I mention it specifically, they all look really good, really sharp, and better than I've ever seen them on video before. So, disc 1, Frankenstein's Daughter. Yeah, Frankenstein's Daughter from 1958. 85 minutes, directed by Richard E. Kuna, who did Giant from the Unknown, which is also on this set, Missile to the Moon, and She-Demons. Not A-list films, per se. With Don Ashley, Sandra Knight, and Donald Murphy. This is in DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 with optional English SDH subtitles. Comes with a commentary by Tom Weaver, Larry Blameyer, and Steve Cronenberg. I'll get back to that in a minute. And you also have the option of captions for the commentary, which is kind of cool. It was originally an Astor Pictures release. Set in 50s suburbia, we have a descendant of Dr. Frankenstein who's working as an assistant to another doctor who's trying to do subtle experiments on the doctor's niece, which turn her into a haggard-looking, bug-eyed creature who roams the night, but also trying to do what his grandfather or great-grandfather had done years earlier and create a body that lives once again from the parts of other bodies, a female Frankenstein monster, which is portrayed pretty clearly by a male actor in this film. So when they call the creature she, it's always like, okay, I guess. So it's a 50 sci-fi movie, the horror film, monster movie that is unique in that it is set in the suburbs. And a lot of people who commented on the extras on this talked about how it was particularly scary to them because it looked like where they lived. It wasn't this castle a long time ago somewhere in another country. It could have been the house next door, and there's weird stuff going on in it. So it's refers to him, the young Frankenstein, as it were. He refers to himself as Oliver Frank in this film. He engages in experiments of a frank nature, let's say. It's a fun updating of the concept with the teen angle. John Ashley, I should have said John Ashley is in this, and he's just super cool. John Ashley is always just this low-key, super cool dude. He is in it as the love interest for Sandra Knight, the young female, not Frankenstein's monster, and she is good. She was in The Terror and briefly married, or for a while married to Jack Nicholson. You get a poolside rock and roll dance party at one point. You get occasionally goofy moments in this film that are laughable now, but occasionally some pretty gruesome makeup effects in this film too. So I quite enjoyed this. The commentary by Tom Weaver, he brings in other voices a lot of times on these commentaries. So it's either another person reading. Tom Weaver is known as somebody who extensively interviewed people from this era, from all levels of filmmaking of the sci-fi monster movie 50s era and 60s. And a lot of times he has audio recordings of his discussions with these people, and sometimes in his commentaries you'll hear their actual voices talking about their experiences, and other times it'll be somebody reading a transcript of those interviews. So he calls in various people for that. At one point he makes a comment about like wokeness and pronouns and all that about Frankenstein, the daughter of Frankenstein's daughter, which I thought was a little unnecessary and sort of said a little bit more about him than it did about what he was talking about, but that was neither here nor there. You have also on the disc Giant from the Unknown from 1958. I had seen this before, but not in a long time. 77 minutes, again, directed by the same director as the previous film, with Ed Kemmer, Sally Fraser, Bob Steele, who I knew as Duffy on F Troop, and Buddy Bear, who was Max Baer, the boxer's brother, and also the uncle of the man, Max Baer Jr., who played Jethro on Beverly Hillbillies. Buddy Bear is the giant. Buddy Bear sounds like something you get at the mall, but that's something else. DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 in English, SDH optional subtitles. You get, again, a commentary with Tom Weaver featuring clips from his interview with the director, his son, producer Arthur Jacobs, Steve Cronenberg, and Larry Blameyer. And you get an archival commentary with Gary Crutcher, who played like the young teen in this film, and I'll jump ahead. I usually talk about the extras second, but his commentary is very interesting because he has a lot of pretty sharp memories and firsthand knowledge of working on this very much non-union film out near Big Bear in California. And also it kind of delves into play-by-play and joking around in some stretches of silence a bit. So part of me feels like the Gary Crutcher commentary might have worked better if it was intercut with the Tom Weaver commentary, but that's just me. And you also, again, have options for subtitles on that commentary, captions. It was a Screencraft Enterprises production, makeup by Jack Pierce, who did the original Karloff Frankenstein makeup. And basically in the California wilderness, there are which is Native American land, with an actor or two portraying Native Americans who are clearly not Native Americans. Basically, a giant conquistador who died centuries earlier has been like miraculously preserved due to the chemical nature of the soil there, and rises again to terrorize the townsfolk and take people out with either his hatchet or his bare hands. He has a very creepy look. It's very effective. It's a good kind of late night. I watched these a mix of Saturday afternoons, which is how I initially saw a lot of this stuff on TV, and late at night. And this is a good kind of a late night spooky film. And you have a scientist and his daughter who are and a local who are looking to dig up artifacts from the Spanish expedition, and maybe unwillingly either cause the conquistador to come back to life, or certainly they are the target of his blade in this film. And when I say giant, he's just basically a very tall, very beefy guy. But it's a fun film. I really enjoyed this, and it's a decent cast of very dependable B-movie players, shall we say. It was shot near where a couple of other films were shot around the same time, most notably The Werewolf, which is a really good film. That's a werewolf film, but it's not Wolfsbane and Full Moon kind of werewolf. It was something else, and that's available on Blu-ray from Arrow, I believe. In the extras on this disc, each disc has 2 films, their commentary or commentaries, and then an extra or extras in the bonus menu. The extra on this is Richard E. Kuna, Filmmaker of the Unknown. It's really cool. Basically, the story goes like this. In 1983, Tom Weaver finds Richard E. Kuna and sends him a bunch of questions he wants to ask him for an interview. And what Kuna does, instead of writing back, he owned a video store at the time, and they had video equipment at the time, so he records himself answering at length responses to these questions, and brings in the guy who's the producer of the movie to talk all about this film and some other stuff. So very interesting, vintage 1983 video. So it looks like a videotape from 1983, but it opens with a tour of this guy's video store. So if you're like me and you grew up with video stores, especially the early days of the video store before the chains came in, this is fascinating to look inside and see what was on the shelves of this 1983 video store. And in 83, it was still VHS and beta side by side. So you can see, I thought it was very cool. And it reminded me a lot of the video stores I used to go to, where, whoever bought the place, they built those shelves themselves, those dark wood shelves for all the miles and miles and miles of catalog tapes they had, and renting or selling VCRs and camcorders and TVs and stuff like that. So that was like a bonus. I didn't expect that at all in this, but it's an hour and a half. It's 36 minutes, and it's really good. It's really good. And it's spiced up with inserts of stills. It's produced. It's not just a raw videotape. And that's for disc 1. Disc 2 has Monster from Green Hell, which I have had on tape from, I think, Rhino Home Video for an incredibly long time, sitting downstairs in my vault that I picked up used at a video store, and I never got around to watching it. Monster from Green Hell from 1957 is 70 minutes long, directed by Kenneth G. Crane, who went on to do The Manster, with Jim Davis, who was not the guy who did Garfield, but the guy who was Jock Ewing on Dallas, Barbara Turner, and Robert Griffin. This is DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 with optional English SDH subtitles. Commentary by my close personal friend, legendary comic artist S.R. Bissett, Steve Bissett, who's been doing a ton of work. He was a very notable comic artist in the 80s and 90s, and now he's very notable for the amount of film scholarship that he brings to supplements on really innumerable discs at this point. Always fun to hear him talk from his firsthand experience of seeing these movies as kids on, Vermont TV, or TV that he would get from over the border in Canada on his TV in Vermont, and comic books and paperbacks and all that kind of stuff. So Steve's commentary is great. There are optional captions on that. The film itself, again, looks and sounds great. There are some light lines here and there that run through it, and so, the occasional splice. The audio doesn't jump, but the picture does, and and occasionally the image very, very subtly wavers a little bit, which makes me think what they had to work with was pretty rough, and they've done a really good job at. The non-educated eye will probably not notice any of this stuff. What's cool too is the film does not play coy with the creature. Inside the first 10 minutes, you see what the creature is in this film. The basic story is scientists are in the African wilds, and they have been doing experiments of firing rockets up into space with creatures or living things on them, and coming back down to see what the effects are of cosmic rays, cosmic radiation. And it turns out, apparently, that at some point, they shot some wasps up into the air. As far as I'm concerned, they could stay up in the air. They shot some wasps up into the stratosphere, and the capsule came down and crashed somewhere in the jungle. And what you got, not to give anything away because it's on the poster and it's in the first few minutes of this film, you get giant irradiated killer wasps, and they look pretty cool. And they're mostly a mix of like a giant semi-mobile thing and stop motion, and then some mechanical stuff. And it's they realize that these things are starting to kill people, and they have to go and stop them. So it wasn't apparent to me while watching this, but in all the extras, they note it. Oh, also the last 2 minutes of this film are in color. Like out of nowhere, it's in color. A lot happens in the last 2 minutes of this movie, much like other films of the day, like I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, War of the Colossal Beast, and some others. These films that were very, very low budget, they would pony up to shoot like a minute or two in color, and so that the last reel of the film could be color. That very short last reel of the film could be color as a little bit of dazzlement in an otherwise, black and white film. So it uses apparently a tremendous amount of footage. Anytime you see African animal footage, excuse me, I get choked up when I talk about stock footage. When you see African footage of animals in Africa in this film, or any kind of people walking or expedition from a distance, it's all from a movie from about 20 years earlier called Stanley and Livingstone from 1937, to the degree where they've had their cast, like it's pointed out in the extras that they need to go from, it's 1957, they need to go from point A to point B to find out what's going on in the jungle. And instead of hopping in a Jeep or getting a helicopter, they get this band and they walk and walk and walk and walk and walk across the tundra for no practical reason, other than that this company had footage of people doing that from Stanley and Livingstone. And again, they're in the Stanley and Livingstone footage, it's set, in the 20s, 30s or earlier, and they have like pith helmets and stuff on, which would not be what you would be wearing in 1957, but apparently in order to match the footage, they had Jim Davis dress up in this thing that matches that. It's just amusing after the fact. While watching the film, none of that ever occurred to me. I was just enjoying the movie for what it was. It's well shot. All of these films are. They're well shot. They're acted pretty well. The editing is good. They don't feel sluggish or boring for the most part. This one, for me, dragged a little at times, despite the production values being good for what they had to work with. Certainly the production value of all the animals was great. It didn't cost them too much other than the cost of the rental of the footage. It does drag a bit when there's no monster on screen. And I feel like this movie is 70 minutes. I felt like it pretty could have easily been 60 minutes, but they needed to be a certain length to be considered a feature at the time. So there's that. So that's Monster from Green Hell. There might be a shade of green in the film at the end. Brain from Planet Arous from 1957, infamous sci-fi alien monster movie with John Agar. This was released earlier, and initially I thought this disc was just a re-release on Blu-ray of a disc I had previously that was on DVD, but the other DVD set had Brain from Planet Arous, but it was 3 other films that it came with. So can't get rid of that set yet. This is directed by Nathan Duran. It runs 71 minutes. Nathan Duran did Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, 20 Million Miles to Earth, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, and a lot of other notable things. It has John Agar, Mr. Shirley Temple, Joyce Meadows, no relation to Audrey, and Robert Fuller, who, if you're like me, you would recognize his face and voice from the TV series Emergency, decade and a half later. It's presented in DTS HD Master 2.0 mono audio, commentary by Tom Weaver and the Weaver Players, which is just what they call it when he has other people read little bit dramatic readings of interviews with these people who have since passed on or that he doesn't have audio recordings of. The movie looks great. It is Agar and Fuller are scientists, and they are investigating why there's all this radiation coming from this cave in Bronson Cavern. You could probably predict that that's where it was going to be. The radiation emitting from a cave, they go to check it out. They find in that cave a giant glowing brain floating in the air with two glowing eyes that possesses Agar and uses his body to do evil deeds to eventually rule the world. And I'll give you a little more of the story than I normally would be, just because it's so wonderful. It turns out Agar comes back. Where's your assistant? I don't know. He's taking a break. Other people go to see what happened to him. They find his body, but in that cave again, they find another giant glowing brain. But this is a good brain. You see, apparently the evil brain came from whatever planet, the planet of evil brains, and is going to try to take over America, try to take over the world. This other glowing brain that the other people find that has not yet possessed John Agar is a good brain. Apparently the evil brain escaped from their planet to this world, and this other brain came there to try to stop him, and I believe it's a him brain. And this other brain basically is like, so who can I need to possess somebody so I can fight this evil brain inside John Agar on its own terms. So naturally you possess the dog, and that's all I'm going to tell you about it. Other than the fact that Agar is hilariously maniacal when he's taken over by the brain, and he has silver orb contact lenses, really, which apparently were incredibly painful whenever he is possessed. So he has this weird teethy grin and these silver spheres for eyes, which is kind of weird and kind of creepy. So it is super silly and campy. Agar is occasionally unintentionally hilarious when he is possessed, and the stuff with the dog is pretty killer. So bonus features on this disc are Missouri Born, the films of Jim Davis. This is really good. 15-minute featurette with C. Courtney Joyner, who's on a lot of these Film Masters releases, talking about the career of Jim Davis and taking this film into account, but also what he did before and what he did after. Man Before the Brain, director Nathan Duran. That is a 14-minute, again, C. Courtney Joyner. I get choked up when I talk about C. Courtney Joyner. A C. Courtney Joyner featurette. Man Behind the Brain, The World of Nathan Duran, 12 minutes with Justin Humphreys, who talks more about Nathan Duran. And then the packaging on this is cool. So you get little replicas, facsimiles of the 4 posters for the films, a little info on the back, region ABC once again, so it is available everywhere in the world. And then you see the 2 discs, again, with their respective poster art on them as to which films are on there. And then you get a nice little, sizable little book with writing about the film by Tom Weaver that is features the original posters, it features ad mats, and it's really pretty funny. So that is a really good set. From Film Master, it is the Monster Mayhem collection. You get 4 classic sci-fi movies looking better than they ever have before, and I say it is well worth it, and it made me very happy.